describe, if you knew that a lot of people were going to come to Seattle, how would you describe Seattle? What would you say?
I think that it's a liberal city that's very educated and interesting and outdoorsy.
Okay, do you fit into any of those categories?
Yes, I fit into all of those
Okay,
categories.
liberal meaning what? So if somebody's not from Washington, what does that mean to you?
I think politically leaning towards the left,
Okay.
open-minded to different points of view, whether it's political, religious,
Everything.
Yeah. So.
Cool. We love it here. We love it here.
How long have you been here?
Well, we've been coming here for about 8 months. So we come every month. Sometimes we stay like over a week. Sometimes it's 2 or 3 days.
And what are you doing exactly?
So the Seattle Times asked us to come.
Oh, really?
They wrote an article on what we did in Asheville, North Carolina. And we are going to one city per state in the United States. So Seattle's our 6th, and we're in North Dakota as our 7th.
Oh, wow.
And we are painting. Have you ever been in North Dakota?
Of course.
You're Montana,
Yeah.
so yeah. And
Oh,
so
yeah.
we're in Devil's Lake, North Dakota.
I don't know where that is.
Completely different than
Yeah.
Seattle. I mean, night and day difference.
Oh, night and day. Trust me, I know. Yeah.
So, North Dakota, probably the opposite of Seattle.
Yeah.
Plus the population of North Dakota the entire population of North Dakota is about the population of Seattle.
Yeah, population of Montana it's like the 4th largest state, and there's like less than 1 person per square mile. It's like less than 1 million people still, I think.
So, okay, politically liberal. What would you say spiritually? What would you say it looks like here?
Here, I think that's like spiritually, and like I also mentioned religious, is that it's really open to being tolerant of people having different religions and different outlooks, different spiritual focuses. And I think that's part of what makes Seattle Seattle. I mean, definitely the separation of church and state is really trying to be enforced here. Whereas I think in other cities like South Dakota and Montana, it's really, you're almost felt to be a bad person if you're even promoting separation of church and state.
How do you think about that? What do you feel about that?
Well, I definitely think there needs to be separation of church and state. I think that.
What does that even mean, though? Like if you ask church what's separate, like, what does that look like?
It just means that no one is telling you what you're going to believe, and that you're allowed to believe what you're going to believe, and you don't even have to talk about it out in public. It can be just something that doesn't have to be an issue. It's something you can go about doing. It doesn't mean that you have to necessarily prevent people from doing what they do. Like, I'm not saying shouldn't be allowed to wear a burqa, or I don't think you should be able to stop people from praying, several times a day. Even if it is in the classroom. I just think it's being allowed to do what you're going to do as long as it isn't completely taking away your freedom and liberties and other people.
That is a silly question, but at one point, do you feel like government did impose religion on people?
Well, it sounds like it happened.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, it sounds like it happened during the 50s with McCarthy when there was like the whole communist thing going on. That's when in God We Trust became the Pledge of Allegiance changed. All of these things changed at that time period, and it was
implemented. You mean like
yeah,
it was saying we should do in God We Trust?
Yeah.
Sorry, I don't mean to be so close. It's like, but the music's so loud, and I'm trying to get the audio.
Stop. It's fine.
I've been noticing as I was sitting here. But no, I think that was a big change in how basically it became a us versus them sort of scenario, and that was probably the beginning of the polarization that we're experiencing now, where we can't really work together because there needs to be an enemy that we have to point at.
Yes, absolutely. Do you feel like since we've done that, and all these interactions always go different ways completely. Sometimes it's just towards education, sometimes it's just towards spiritual stuff. But since we are talking about the spiritual component, as people have tried to separate, do you feel like then in America is there a standard anymore? Like, is there a standard that we can all go to? Or is it to each his own mentality in America?
That's really tough because it's hard to know what the standard was when we were first formed because we weren't here, and it's really hard to know really what was the feeling of the people. And everybody did come over for different reasons, and people were brought over for different reasons, and so. But
now, if you would look at the founding fathers, a good majority of them would say they were Bible-believing guys. In fact, almost over half of them were. Over half of them had some kind of a seminary degree. So if you were to say the standard, which I think you would, even if you agree or disagree, you'd have to say that it was a lot based on the Bible.
I don't think that our principles of our government were based on the Bible necessarily. Maybe they personally, maybe that's how they wrote some of the founding principles, but it wasn't necessarily put into the Constitution.
It did reference God.
There was some reference, but not a lot, really, considering how much more was added later. So I think that everybody's belief systems are coming from somewhere.
Sure.
I mean, you have to
somewhere.
So you're right. I mean,
there has to be a
from their
standard.
mother, from their father, from their religious beliefs. But at the same time, I think that they were working hard to try to keep the separation.
Okay. Do you think that that's been a healthy thing that we've pulled away from a standard? And here's what I mean by that. So if each one of us has our to each his own mentality, don't you think then there's no structure anymore? There's no standard anymore.
Yeah, I understand that, and I don't think it's necessarily.
Thanks for talking. I like your perspective. So.
Well, and I don't think it's necessarily. I think to each his own is even a little bit severe.
Okay.
For me, anyway. I think my beliefs personally are like I'm a very curious person, and I like to know what other people's beliefs are. And so it's not necessarily teach their own. It's more like, so what are you doing, and how's that working for you? And maybe I can incorporate some of your beliefs into my life because it seems to be really helpful for you, and I'm lacking in some way. So I don't think it's necessarily, even though that is part of an Americanism, to be kind of cowboy and I'm going to do my own thing and whatever.
It's totally an American thing.
Yeah, but
you're pulling out what you like from everything else.
And that's not, and that's
right.
That's a good thing. But I also think that it's good to pull out what works and what's going to be beneficial, but not to be so isolated and so cowboy that you can't see any your own anything but your own.
Did you ever at any point in your life with religion, did you ever grow up in a religion?
Yeah, I grew up in a very strong Christian family. I grew up Lutheran, Protestant.
In Montana?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, my mom was the church secretary. So I grew up in a...
Is she still?
No, she's
Is that
retired.
a Saturday Night Live skit? The church secretary?
That's a church lady.
Oh, the church
lady. And my mom wasn't like that. She
The
was
church secretary.
She was a nice Christian. She's a nice Christian.
So what made you at what point say, this isn't for me?
How do you know I said that?
Well, I'm basing off of your beliefs, and
I think that it's possible to still have a person who believes, pretty strictly in the Christian doctrine, and also to be open-minded to others. However, you are perceptive and possibly correct. I mean, I can't say that I'm not a Christian because it's so deep within me.
you can say that you're.
I can't say I'm not. I can't say I'm not. I'm not to that point
How
yet.
would you define a Christian then?
A person who believes, a Christian, by a Christian's definition, is a person who believes that Jesus Christ is the one and only way through salvation. And
So
that,
that is a standard, then, what you're saying then, would that contradict your belief?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. So basically, that's why I can't really say I am a Christian, but I can't say I'm not because you know.
You know what Jesus says about that? Oh man, can I say this? You're cool with this. He says it's better to be hot or cold than wishy-washy, than lukewarm.
I think I am wishy-washy. Am I not wishy-washy and lukewarm? What am I?
Well, you're either totally in or you're totally not in. And what I hear you saying is I like the fact that I can trust in Jesus, but I don't want to offend anybody, so I'm open to everybody else. Jesus would say, no way.
But I'm not 100% sure, though, that Jesus is the one way.
Okay, then that's a fair statement.
And the reason why is because I do believe he existed. I believe, I don't know.
And I like talking. Thank you.
Yeah, and I don't know 100% if he's the one salvation, the one way. In fact, I really don't believe that.
You don't believe that?
That's what I don't believe, because I believe there are other people on other parts of the planet and other cultures, and there were other spiritual leaders.
Okay.
So maybe I'm putting Jesus
Let's
into
do
it.
this. Have you ever talked to other religions about why or about their salvation?
Well, salvation is not a word that's used in a lot of different religions. So,
okay, how they would have eternal life or get into paradise,
or enlightenment,
whatever
or
that is. So let's just use Muslims for an example.
Okay.
In Dallas, where I'm from, I have an acquaintance who's the imam. So he's the head of all of the mosques, right? So 5,000 Muslims funnel through every Friday. That's a lot of people, right? It's one of the largest mosques in the United States. Dr. Yusuf is his name, okay? As we dialogue, I say, tell me this. When you pass away, how do you know where you're going? Well, what Muslims would say is that your good angel has to outweigh your bad angel. And he says, Kyle, I have no assurance of where I'm going. None. if you talk to any religion except Christianity, they would all say that in some form it's about being good and living out like the works mentality. Just hang on though, right? So that's what they would say. Christianity, what Jesus would say, it's through faith alone. You and I can't earn it. There's no way to earn it.
Yeah, you can be. I could be the nicest person, the best person on the planet.
Yeah.
But that's where you know.
So is that where you have a hard time with?
No. What I think what I have a hard time with is that I actually believe that there are different spiritualities for different people based on your culture.
Okay.
And I think that the whole purpose is, yeah, you're right. So I guess that is what I have a problem with, because I do believe it's about a transformation within your heart and your mind. And that really is what spirituality is all about, is to basically make you a wiser, more compassionate, open, generous person.
So is a Christian who thinks that Jesus is the way, the truth, and life, the only way to God is through Jesus, would you consider that narrow-minded and intolerant?
Well, that's what they're trained to believe. So is that narrow-minded and intolerant? I mean, if that's what you're being told.
Who's trained to believe?
That's what Christians are being told, that this is the only way.
We have a choice. I have chosen that. Nobody's forced that.
But that's the doctrine. The doctrine is telling you that.
Well, the Bible tells me that. There's a difference. When we say doctrine, what do you mean?
I guess I mean the Bible, yeah.
Okay, which I would say 100%.
And the Bible and the interpretation of.
No, see, I don't. I would go with what's the Lord telling me through the Scriptures.
Through the Scriptures.
Yeah, absolutely.
But that's also very tricky, because that gets interpreted differently. Depending on who's interpreting it, and also we don't even have original versions of these books. They've all been transcribed in different languages before we have like that final copy that we are using.
One of the things I found about Seattle is you have a lot of smart people, and so we intellectualize to the point where we don't have room or give room for faith. And so if we have to, the only way we can justify Christianity is we have to reason it. And he says it's childlike faith. So you can always have this thought.
And that's why I have a problem. I have a problem with childlike faith, because that can be so misinterpreted and turned, like, just, it can be misinterpreted and fed to someone, childlike faith given to someone who trusts a leader who could be just really spot on and God gets it completely. But it could also be given to with this childlike faith by somebody who is just out there not getting it, and he could be leading huge churches and having huge congregations and really manipulating the way that the current of the world is going, just because of this childlike faith. So yeah, I guess I do have a problem with that.
I totally agree. And the crazy thing is I have 4 kids. So I have Maya, Nadia, Selah, 3 girls, 7, 6, and 4, and then I have a son named Jude. The reason I named him Jude, you'll like this, okay, is that there are people in Seattle, people in Dallas that I would call false teachers. In the book of Jude, it says that we are to contend earnestly for the faith because of false teachings. So what you have a hard time with, in fact, I found a school here in Seattle that labels themselves as Christian. I walked into the school, this happened just yesterday, okay? I have a doctorate. I walk right into these folks, and I say, and I ask them about the Bible. They're teaching theology, which you would mean study of God, right? And I say, is the Bible true? And every one of their answers is, well, what do you mean by true? Well, what do you mean, what do I mean by true? I go, is this thing true? And they go, well, it depends how you look at it. To me, if you're teaching it, you either have to believe that it's all or nothing. And so what you are saying is 100% on. And so because of that, though, what you've done, and I think you're going to have a hard time with, is you're basing your faith on how people live rather than Jesus Christ himself.
Yeah, you're right. That's why I think...
Does that make sense?
It totally makes sense. And that's why I still say, like, part of me is still a Christian.
Yeah.
Because I believe in that man. I believe in that person.
So you need to look at the source, not the resource.
You're right. That is true. That is true. And so, but I also believe that there are other spiritual leaders out there who deserve credit.
Like who? Give me an example.
Well, actually, I'm actually a big fan of Buddha myself. Okay. So.
How does Buddha encourage people to live? What would you say?
I think it's about understanding human emotions and understanding, and also like intellectualizing things and learning how to back away from that and go more deep within, stopping cycles of behavior and things basically stopping cycles and trying to go deeper within. But
now the crazy thing about that is their cycles, they keep going.
you can actually, if you can identify the cycles of like craving. The craving's a big one.
Okay.
The cycle, that craving can be for anything, you know, and being able to identify that and stop that is a huge foundation of Buddhism.
Last question.
Yes.
Thank you. By the way.
What is this for? So you
paint-
does this have a religious aspect to it? I feel like we went to religion, or is that?
Here's what's interesting. I'll say this, and I mentioned this to a girl outside of the federal building downtown in Seattle yesterday. I am the farthest person that you would find from being religious. Jesus would ever say, in fact, the hardest people that Jesus ever had troubles with were the religions.
That's right.
Because it was all about to-dos, and it was about making myself look good, and how can people notice me? So some of these false teachers, that's what they are about. And Jesus says it's about a relationship. And I think we always view the American church as lists of to-dos, and if you don't, gosh darn it, you're going to hell. Jesus says, come to me and let me love on you in the process. So my question is with your views of kind of in and kind of not. I think that's a fair statement. What do you do with the afterlife personally? How do you perceive the afterlife?
Well, you know what? Even when I was a Christian and I was like full-fledged, 100%, I still struggled with the idea of heaven and hell. And I kind of determined in my head, you know, even as like a youth, I decided that hell was basically the end. Hell was no longer, you know, it wasn't burning, it wasn't Dante's Inferno, it wasn't anything like that. It was just, you're done. That's it. And then as my views changed, you know, and I got older and thought more, I think maybe even heaven could be that. And I know that sounds really dark and horrible, but
like it's just done.
Maybe that's just it. Maybe you're just returning back to the soil and you are returning as something else, you know, it's a little reincarnation, but you're becoming another life force. Maybe that is all that it is. And I know that sounds really dark to somebody who really believes, but
I appreciate your thought on that. My only question is if that's the perspective, then what was the point of Jesus coming and doing what he did?
Because he was needed. I think we need guidance. We need guidance.
But don't you think part of his whole component of coming here was to give us life?
Don't you understand that if you actually are become enlightened and you can actually get beyond your own suffering, that is the life? I mean, look at us. Look at how we're living. Look, we're in this horrible mall. And this is horrible living. If we can get beyond this, and live as if we are like on a beach in Hawaii, but it's all in our head and our heart, that is living. Well, and that could be enlightenment. That could be heaven.
That's almost biblical. Almost. Jesus says, and this is what I love, he says, look, if you trust in me, you then become a part of the kingdom. Now. Like, now. And then as a result of being a part of the kingdom now, that leads towards, because we'll always be with him forever.
There are a lot of references. There are actually a lot of references in the scripture that imply that maybe it is now and not later.
I think it is now, but now here, think about this. When you were you born in the United States? You had a birth certificate. You're automatically an American. To me, when I believe in Jesus, this is going to get cheesy for a second, but just go along with me. I got my passport in Jesus. I got my birth certificate in Jesus. I was reborn in Jesus. Nobody can take that away. Nobody. At all. And so, you're right. It's here. And the point is, Jesus says, is now you got to start living like me. The problem that you have with Christians is that once they say, I believe in Jesus, they don't live like they're a part of the kingdom. And so therefore, why would I want to be a part of that kingdom? And so that's hard. So, Lord bless you. Really. Do you own a Bible?
I have many. Most of them are actually Montana.
All right, take this. That's my Merry Christmas gift for you.
Thank you. Thanks.
All right, sometime during the Christmas season, and this is what I love. Nobody's forcing you. You don't have. You can blow this off completely and throw it away. If you ever feel inspired, there's 5 verses on here. It's kind of, man, this is already a screwy one. Read starting with this kind of yellow.
Okay.
And go all the way around. Read 5
starting
verses.
Starting with Romans. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, they're all Romans.
No, not all.
No, they're not all. Okay.
But when you go before and read it, okay? All I ask is you say one prayer.
Okay.
God, give me an open mind to what I'm reading.
I'll do that.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Jennifer?
Jennifer.
God bless you. I'm Kyle. This is Drew.